No intro today. We're getting straight into this. I had to ask, how long will it take either Kotaku or any journalist to face the reality that YouTubers are the new media?
Kotaku, of course, is an absolute joke of an outlet. It's shocking that they've survived this long, but they were just recently purchased, and I'm sure that means their new owners are going to force them to push more propaganda. And now they're attacking Final Fantasy, saying Final Fantasy doesn't need turn based back. It needs better stories, as if Final Fantasy doesn't already have them. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, I say it a lot. I absolutely loved Final Fantasy 16, and I know that can be kind of a hot take. I'm not saying it's the best Final Fantasy story that's ever told. I didn't necessarily mind the direction that they went in with this gritty, dark, mature, almost like Game of Thrones-esque feel. I didn't mind it.
Well, that's good. If you like Final Fantasy 16 or Final Fantasy 7 Remake, well then, all the power to you. I'm not saying you can't play it, but sometimes you have to know, everyone has their own preference, okay? Whether it be they like Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, Resident Evil, all of them have their own preference. Some of you may like to play Resident Evil. Some of you may like to play games such as, I don't know, Assassin's Creed, or even better, Kingdom Hearts. Whatever it is, all of you have your own favorites, okay?
It was entertaining. I thought it was enjoyable. At the same time, I wouldn't mind them going back in direction and going back to the days of like Final Fantasy VII, for example. Though, to say that it was straight up bad is absolutely mind-blowing, because that's just not the case. Even if you don't generally like the story, I feel that people can still appreciate it to some extent, but of course, Kotaku needs those rage clicks. Their new owners must be already demanding they pump out more articles and get more clicks, and I can't say I feel that bad for these activists who, let's be fair, are probably just using AI at this point and are just editing it themselves to make sure that there's not any, like, major errors, but they've put out this hit piece on Final Fantasy that's getting absolutely wrecked right now.
Before we let that, I need to see the name. Yes, I think I'm... Wait, what's this say? The next entry shouldn't take the wrong lesson from Clair Obscur Expedition 33. What does that even mean? Wait, what do you mean Final Fantasy doesn't need... Yeah, most importantly, why doesn't Final Fantasy need turn-based? Look, I think turn-based RPG is the one thing that brought Final Fantasy to its success. Why do you think Clair Obscur Expedition 33 was now successful? It reminded people at Square Enix that turn-based RPG still a thing and not outdated. You know what? Why don't we let's see what Ethan Gach had to say?
It says there's been an undercurrent of opinion ever since Clair Obscur Expedition 33 took audiences by surprise earlier this year that the approach taken by the turn-based fantasy RPG is the cure for everything that ails Final Fantasy. It delivers an old-school take on the genre that's much less flawed than both Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, garnering rave reviews, gaudy buzz, and impressive sales for a first-time studio. Final Fantasy fans have been jealous. I think that the reason why we Final Fantasy fans have been a bit jealous is just because Square Enix abandoned what made them special in the first place, and if they hadn't, maybe this year we would have gotten a Clair Obscur versus Final Fantasy for GOTY, right? They would have actually have been listening to their fans, so we would be getting potentially a very good, high-quality, turn-based Final Fantasy experience that could rival Clair Obscur. Now, I absolutely loved Clair Obscur, and maybe that is in part because I used to be such a mega Final Fantasy fan. Regardless, though,
I'm gonna have to make a guess. Whoever says that turn-based RPG was outdated, they never exactly played Final Fantasy. I'm 100% certain whoever they see that says turn-based RPG is dead or perhaps doesn't want turn-based RPG doesn't play that game. Whoever these executive in Square Enix, even though they don't play games, they will check on what works, okay? And when they hear that turn-based RPG is hated or is outdated or something, they remove that. It's a false mistake. They listen to the wrong person.
a phenomenal game, and I don't like that they're being compared But at the same time, if it's going to make Square Enix wake up to the fact that they need to reverse course, I'm fine with that. Do I think that all Final Fantasy games going forward need to do a complete 180? I'm not necessarily saying that. I would love if they made another game like 16, but it was a spin off. Imagine if Final Fantasy 16 was slightly smaller in budget, a much tighter experience, and it didn't have so much downtime throughout the game and so much exploration. And then this was a spin-off, it would have done insane numbers for them, especially if it was priced at $50 like Clair Obscur. But
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think Square Enix should learn from Clair Obscur. Look, they can't just dismiss things. I think when you dismiss something, you end up alienating your own audience. Square Enix, if your audience or your gamers, consumers, says that they want turn-based RPG, listen to them. I know this is about Kotaku as well, don't worry. We're just making sure that that's the reason why I say this is 500% cooked for mainstream media. And that includes Kotaku.
regardless, they talk quite a lot about the battle systems and game designs, things like that. But what really infuriates me, and of course a lot of other people here, is the fact that they are hating on the storytelling that we've been getting. Rebirth, though, is a world-class game in so many ways, from the cinematic presentation to the maximalist open-world design, but it bungles many of the original source material's most important moments without providing interesting new interpretations, tensions, or epiphanies in return. They talk about how the Gold Saucer section is a perfect encapsulation, and they feel that Barrett's backstory was bungled quite a bit, which I don't necessarily disagree with. I do feel that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth missed the mark in terms of a little bit of the storytelling, but I do think that overall it was still done pretty well. My major issue is them attacking just kind of Final Fantasy in general, and it's almost like they're presenting this as if the franchise has not had great storytelling in the past, when of course it has. Character-driven narratives, political intrigue, philosophical themes, all integral parts of what make Final Fantasy extremely special.
You know what? I'm gonna have to make one assumption. Ethan Gach probably used ChatGPT to say, okay, how do I make an article hating on Final Fantasy games or story? They found it, they edited it, boom, got it. Now you know why nobody trusts game journalists. Honestly, it's been shocking that Kotaku lasts this long. IGN is still going as well. Even they aren't shutting down. It will come to a point where all companies, and I do mean all video game journalist companies, they're gonna have to shut down because all news are going to YouTube, and many of these journalists are also doing YouTube, which they find it hard to even make, or perhaps to even grow. Unless, of course, if you're a woman. But then again, even that's not enough.
In the first place. It's got layered non-linear storytelling, amazing lore and world building, characters that evolve through the story. I mean, just going through a couple of Final Fantasy games here, Terra begins with no sense of identity or purpose and slowly regains her humanity, becoming a symbol for hope. Sephiroth is a tragic figure shaped by betrayal and loss of identity. They don't bring up Sephiroth here, and the amazing representation, I guess we'll say, of him in Final Fantasy Rebirth. Of course, Aerith's death is one of the most memorable and emotionally impactful scenes, and I would say just a gaming history, right? I feel like if you're a gamer, you know what happens and how heartbreaking it is. And then, of course, you have characters in games like Final Fantasy 16 with Clive, which we're going to get into in a second here, who sacrifice themselves for the greater good. And I could go on all day about how Final Fantasy storytelling is so amazing, but even with Final Fantasy 7 specifically, they're completely missing what Rebirth actually does right, and I feel that that is such a disservice. But of course, you see in just 1 second here why they're really attacking games like 16. 16 faltered even more frequently. For every great character moment between Clive, Joshua, and Cid, there was something in the larger narrative about geopolitical rivalries and enslaved magic users that was either straight up dumb or borderline offensive.
Whoever wrote this, the real question you ask, I can't even fathom, okay? Yeah, I'm gonna cut some of those out, and I had to say, of course it's offensive because they're slave and all that. Jesus. Above all the things, Ethan Gach, you had to say this? Oh my god. Now you know why every time when people try to go to websites such as Kotaku, they get hit with an ad. Here, let me tell you one example. When I was visiting The Verge, you wanna know what happened? Hit with an ads, telling me to subscribe. They're losing money. I mean, seriously, how many more monies are they gonna lose? Which I had to ask all of you a question. Is Kotaku really worth nothing? Generally, folks, I have to know from all of you, is it true? How many times does Kotaku get bought off?
Right here is why they wanted to write this piece, and they just could not help themselves. They're saying that they want Final Fantasy to go in a new direction going forward, and the problems that it has all boils down to Final Fantasy not pushing the narratives that they personally agree with. It's not really about good storytelling. It's about telling stories where the narrative they want to hear about is promoted and explored in the way that they find acceptable. And if you don't include those narratives in such a way, you're telling a bad story. They're literally outing themselves, saying that they want storytelling on their terms. And this infuriates me so freaking much.
That's right, it does me too. But see, here's the thing. Remember the key word, fantasy, folks. Fantasy. Seriously, Ethan Gach, do you even understand what fantasy means, numbnuts? It doesn't revolve reality. That's the reason why most games are in fact fantasy and doesn't revolve reality. And here's the thing. You idiots keep on saying that, oh, why these scripters covering me? Don't they have anything better to do? Genius. Remember one thing. You guys are the one that created them. Look, people like Vera Dart or Smash JT, they're the ones who have to watch all of your stupid videos, all your dumb tweets, all your dumb articles, pull them all together, stir it up, and look at it and show it to see how moronic you idiots are in front of everyone to see. It's not their fault. Again, you guys are the one that created them. It's true, and that's what really happened. You do it to yourself.
Their terms. And this infuriates me so freaking much because Final Fantasy 16, while yes, it did falter in some ways, it did so amazing in so many ways. It has bold, mature storytelling, and it doesn't shy away from very intense or difficult themes like oppression, war, the cost of power. That is a really great element that they represented fantastically in this game. It creates a world that feels lived in and politically complex, where the fate of nations are tied to personal struggles. It is a darker take on fantasy, clearly inspired by games like, or stories like Game of Thrones, and it makes every major plot development feel earned and, again, impactful. I think that's the best word that I could possibly use here. The stakes are high, but the story always feels grounded in the human experiences of these characters. Clive, I love him so much. And by the way, Ben started such a fantastic job voicing him, but he is one of the, in my opinion, strongest protagonists in the series, not because he's like the most powerful, but because of how much he actually grows. And I feel like in some Final Fantasy games, the characters don't necessarily grow as much as I'd like them to, but similar to Terra, for example, or even Titus, they grow so much. His journey from a traumatized soldier to someone who tries to reshape the world is filled with pain and loyalty, and he's got so much like self-reflection that he does. And I just think that they, of course, really only wrote this article to push the narrative that, well, Final Fantasy needs to go in a new direction story-wise because they are personally bothered. I mean, again, they say the larger narrative about geopolitical rivalries and enslaved magic users that was either straight up dumb or borderline offensive, so that is why they don't like this game. It never quite grapples with the stakes of its grim world building before eventually ditching it all for some old school Final Fantasy guy in the sky Deus Ex Machina shit that undermines everything players had previously become so emotionally invested in. Yeah, I don't think that they actually played this game.
Of course they doesn't. Yeah, I think I'm gonna let that stop for now. But don't worry, if you want the full context, I'll leave it in the description. Every time you read it, you ask yourself this: have these idiots played the game? Whether it's Final Fantasy VII Remake or Rebirth or even Final Fantasy 16. But then again, we all know these are journalists, and many video game journalists these days don't play games. Yes, some do, but some don't, okay? The majority of them, okay? Majority of them, activists. They don't play games. I mean, we play games. I play games. I think on my Stellar Blade, it's 28 hours for Dynasty Warrior. But for my Dynasty Warrior Origin, I played like, what, nearly 200 hours. Well, one reason is because The Wanderer, you can name it anything you want, and you can make any playthrough you want. Anything. What do we expect from journalists and mainstream media? At this point, I wonder, what will it take for any of these idiots to accept the reality? YouTubers are now the new media. Their articles, their coverage, are now irrelevant. How many articles they pump up doesn't matter what they do. Well, YouTubers are gonna keep on growing and growing. They can't stop it. That's the truth.
Let's go. It's collapsing. This way. Damn it. Run!
Leave a like and subscribe if you want gaming news, gaming theories, or you just want to see me play games. You can visit my first, third, and fourth channel up here or link in the description.